Are there any burning questions besides Rochelle's? Why my listing hasn't sold? All right. So that's fine. You don't have to have questions. So what I've pasted in the chat a link to what I'm going to use as a handout. It's a reference article. It's also going to be posted in Workplace. It's already in the document library for those of you that follow along with that. And what we're talking about, I don't want to do that. Yes, I know. I've been having fun with Zoom. What we're talking about is when we're evaluating property for pricing purposes, right? Oftentimes called the CMA, but it can be more than that. Some of you are thinking CMA, isn't that, Country Music Awards or something like that? You're right, that's what it is. And it also is a comparative or competitive market analysis. All right. And so we use this in both buyers and seller situations because a very common question from a buyer is, how much should I offer? Or a version of how much should I offer is, what do you think it's going to appraise for? All right, do we need an appraisal contingency? Do you think it's going to appraise for that price? What do you think it's worth? And so you have to be able, as an agent of a buyer, to give them information that might answer those questions. And of course, if a seller is thinking about selling the property, one of the things they want to know is, what am I going to be able to sell it for? Now, there's several ways of accomplishing this, and we're going to actually go out on the internet and do a few of them as we're going along. But there are certain things that you need to be just sort of familiar with. And the first is AVMs, and an AVM is an automated valuation model. There's one built in to the software that we use for creating CMAs, but the automated valuation model, Zillow, right? Their Zestimate is an example. Redfin does the same thing. Realtor.com does the same thing. Realist, which is a brand name of a program that works with the MLS, it's for tax data, has a built-in automated valuation model, and RPR, which we're going to look at, has an automated valuation model. So does this mean that Zillow is correct and knows what the value of the property is? The answer is no, not necessarily. So why do we need to pay attention and know what those values are? It's because, first of all, the seller probably does. If you were a typical homeowner and you wanted to get an idea what your property is worth, where would you go? Probably to Zillow, maybe Redfin, right? Check them all out, right? See what they all say. And if you as a real estate agent are purporting to be an expert, local market expert, and you're talking to somebody about selling their home, it would be good that you look to see with Zillow and Redfin and Realtor and what they all say. So when buyers are thinking of making an offer and they're looking at the property on Zillow or Redfin or Realtor.com, it's going to say right next to the listing what they think it's worth. You need to know that, right? What they say, right? Now, sometimes it depends upon the format in which I deliver the presentation. Sometimes what I do is I just create a Google Sheet and I put in the address of the property and I put in Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, Realist, RPR. And then I put in the dollar amounts and then I have the spreadsheet average it and I show it to the seller. Right, because we have to at least acknowledge that that's what the internet says their property's worth. Now, there's different software. Not all of us are using the same software to access the multiple listing service, which makes this a little bit more challenging. Right, many of us use a software program called Matrix, which is by far the easiest. Some of you may be using Paragon, and some of you may be using Rapatoni, and some of you may be using something even more obscure like Flex or something like that. So they all kind of sort of work the same. This is my opinion, right? My opinion. Most of what they produce looks like crap, right? It does not look pleasantly appealing. It looks old-fashioned. It looks like it was a template created in the 1990s or something like that. It just does, right? So you may have a different opinion, but look at them. They don't look very pretty, right? It's sort of a rough thing, but it's got most of the right numbers, and it's already in the MLS, so why not? Now, one of the things that I use a lot when I'm going through this is something called a quick CMA, which I will demonstrate. It's a matrix product. And then there's a matrix CMA, a Paragon has a CMA, Rapatoni has a CMA. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these because, frankly, I would never use them. Right? I don't use them. I don't use Matrix as CMA, and if I had Paragon, I wouldn't use theirs, and I wouldn't use Rapatoni's. Right? I wouldn't. What I do use is a quick CMA, and I use RPR. Right? And I'm going to show you how, right, we would do that, right? What exactly we're going to do. And then at the very end, there's this KV core, which is a special program that comes with our software, which I'm going to show you a little bit about. And let me just explain what the hierarchy of this is. Right? At the beginning, at the very bottom level, you're going to have clients that you don't even need to bring something printed out, right? Because when you've talked to them, they say, well, we think it's worth about $750, and you think it's worth about $750, and it's not going to be a big discussion as to what's the price, right? Everybody sort of already agrees. All right, and if you know them, right, and they're just saying, well, what do you think my house will sell for? And I say, and they say, well, that sounds about right. Do you think, where should we list it? And I say a number, and they say, well, that sounds good to me. Do you understand there's no CMA here, right? There's no presentation of graphs and charts and comps and all of that other stuff. Sometimes your relationship with the seller is such that it's casual, but a little less casual than having nothing. In that case, sometimes I bring what's called a quick CMA. And what a quick CMA does is it summarizes the actives, the pendings, the recently sold, expired, canceled, whatever I choose, into a 1 to 1.5 page summary. And sometimes I might refer to that. You see that one right there, it's the same square footage as yours. Right, this thing got 825,000. You see that, and that's all that they need, right? Because now in both of those cases, the very casual presentation of a CMA, in both of those cases, we're not really on a competitive listing appointment. Right, so this is somebody that one of the examples that I might use if we do more than one. Is a property that I listed. There was no way I wasn't going to get this listing, right? There's no way, right? I knew him for a long time. There was just no way, right? So it wasn't a competitive. It was simply, this is what I think your property is going to sell for and why. But let's say that they're interviewing 5 other agents, right? You're one of 6. This is a competitive listing. As you go up the competition scale, your stuff has to get better, right? It has to get better. And so what I use almost all the time, right, is an RPR CMA, and all of these are hyperlinked articles on how to do this, but we're going to go through an example. There's their market data. Realist is a program that works with records from the county recorders. I was able to say it. And the core present is the KV core version. I'll tell you one of the cool things, we may look at that a little bit, but let's say I knew that this was let me put it this way. Everyone in your area has access to the MLS. If your CMA and listing presentation is the MLS version, and they're talking to a bunch of agents, chances are somebody's going to have something that looks just like yours, right? The layout is the same, the color scheme is the same, the comps are, everything is the same. You realize it's difficult for you to argue that you're different from the other agents when your stuff looks exactly the same as their stuff. So RPR would be an upgrade. Now, I'm surprised at how many real estate agents don't understand that they have the realtor's property resource, but it looks way better, right? It's an obvious upgrade. We're going to look at an example. But then everybody who's a member of the Association of Realtors has access to RPR. So if they're interviewing a bunch of agents, is it possible that they're going to get some other RPR reports that look just like my RPR report? So if I really want to stand out, I want a presentation that looks different from RPR and looks different from the MLS. That's what the core present is. It can be delivered online and it's interactive. And one of the cool things about it is in terms of pricing, you could say, because it makes this one page like, about pricing, that Redfin says this and Zillow says that, and it actually puts the numbers so that people can see that as well. And you understand, hardly anyone, the chances that a competitor on those appointments is going to be using that is very remote. So that would give you the opportunity to stand out and look different from all the other agents that are doing CMAs. So if you're a listing agent and you have lots of listing appointments, you want to have a special program, not just using the Association of Realtors or the MLS program. I mean, it'll do a functional job, but it doesn't look all that special because everybody's got it. All right. So what is a CMA? It's used for buyers and sellers. I think I've already, there's a detailed analysis, which we're going to look at, and then an objective. Not everyone is wired in such a way that they want the detailed analysis. Right? Not everybody wants to know the numbers, other than they want to know. This is what sellers want to know from you on a listing appointment. Number one, what do you think my house is going to sell for? Right. Number two, how much commission are you going to charge? And maybe they'll say, can you estimate how much I can net? And also, how long do you think this is going to take? Right? That's about it. All right, so do they want to hear about the other comp that was painted funny, but sold it? They want, what do you think I got all this my house for? And if I listed it and then I sold it for that, how much money am I going to get? All right. However, in a competitive environment, they might want to see agents who really have their stuff together and it looks professional. And even if they don't want to read the analysis, they're happy that you went to the trouble of creating it. Right. Also, by the way, it'll make you sound smart. So you understand, you need to know when you're talking to that seller with Zillow and Redfin and Realtor, you need to know what their numbers are, because they do. Right? You need to really analyze what's going on in that market, because they probably have. Before you go there, there are questions that you ought to ask. Why are you selling your home? Right? How long? When do you want to put the home on the market? Sometimes it's right away. Sometimes it's next year. When do you want to be moved out? Right? Do they need to rent back? That sort of thing. Expectations. What are you looking for in an agent? Are you interviewing other agents? Or who? Right? If there's a scheduling thing, it's better sometimes to be last. Hard to say. It cuts either way. And notice, I'm going to highlight this. And the way I do it is just a little bit different, but as long as you ask the question, I'm going to be happy. I say to people, so I bet you're paying attention to what's going on in the market where your property is located, right? You get postcards and flyers from real estate agents, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So do you have an idea what your property is likely to sell for? I've had people who just blurt out the number. They just say, this is what I want, right? Oh, cool. This, by the way, is a very useful thing to know when you're preparing a market analysis, right? This is a useful thing to know. So sometimes they'll just tell you, right? If you ask them, please ask them, right? Ask them. Are there any loans or liens against the property? How much? What's the interest rate? That's necessary in order to do a net sheet. One of the things I find strange, I know I'm just ranting, but RPR and Breakthrough Broker, which does stuff for EXP as well, both of them have come out the same. We have this great new concept in a better than a CMA, right? And then this new concept is, it's called a PAR, a PEAR. Google search it if you don't believe me, which is a personal equity assessment report. So what do they actually do in the personal equity assessment report? They take the price of the property and they subtract the amount of the lien, the loan, and they come up with equity. That's it. That's this is what they claim is a new idea. The challenge with just doing that is there are a lot of other expenses like commissions and things like that that sellers are going to have, many of which vary by location, and you need to be able to give somebody an accurate net sheet, which is what Chicago Title is going to talk about next week, and how to use the software. You want them to describe the property. This is really important. Say to them, can you please describe your property for me? Describe it. Right? Mention any improvements that you've made or things that need to be fixed. And Rochelle, did you just text me?
I did text you the address.
Oh, I see. You weren't you didn't want everybody to know. I get you.
Oh, I thought you said text me.
Yeah, well, I was hoping it was in the chat so I could just copy it.
Do you want me to put it in the chat?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
So I'm on I have a person that I'm mentoring. She was doing an open house. She gets an appointment. A neighbor that was wandering around. She's never listed the house. She wanted me to go with her. They were interviewing 5 other brokerages. We were one of 6. The agreement is that she was going to do the CMA because she really knew that area, and I was going to get them to sign the listing. Right, that was the idea. So she looks it up. She didn't ask them to describe their property. Didn't ask them. And the reason she didn't ask them is she figured I got software that'll tell me the square footage, bedrooms, and bathrooms. And if I ask, it sounds like I don't know. I don't want to sound like I don't know. All right, so she does the CMA for a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,300 square foot house. And when we show up, it's a 5-bedroom, 3-bath, 2,800 square foot house. Now, what that means is most likely that the owner did some stuff without permits, which doesn't mean we don't count all the bedrooms, bathrooms, and square footage. We just have to compare it to other unpermitted, because it's not, you don't just ignore it. So in other words, the CMA was worthless, right? You understand? It was for a totally different property than the one we were in. Ask them to describe the house. Right, you may find, I find this often, they have a different number of bedrooms than the tax assessor has. Right, they have different numbers for stuff, and we need to know that. Right, are there any upgrades, improvements, or any repair issues that need to be addressed? Because we're trying to compare properties, comps. We would, special needs. I'm not gonna. So how would you suggest the price? You look at with the automated valuation models. So this is what I call the 5 ways to price a property. Did you know that there were 5 ways to price a property? Now, the way that I would use this is that sometimes when I'm feeling, arrogant, obnoxious, and I'm on a listing appointment, and they've talked to other agents, I would say, well, when we discuss pricing, I'm going to go through the 5 ways in which you can price a property. I'm sure the other agents talked about the 5 ways, didn't they? Right? Didn't they? And usually they say, well, no, they did a CMA, but that's it. And I said, really? That's all? They only did 1 of the 5? They didn't give you all 5? Really? Sometimes you can eliminate the snarky part of all of that and simply say there are 5 ways of pricing a property. One of them is a CMA, which you may have gotten from other agents, but there are other things we might want to look at. So the 5 ways, number 1 is we ought to look at the automated valuation models. Right. And that's when I would put them in the spreadsheet and average them. We ought to look at that. Right. Because buyers are looking at it and they are doing, Then we also want to look at dollars per square foot. And there's 2 ways of looking at dollars per square foot. One is what the MLS says. And a quick CMA, by the way, of a search for the last 30 days of closed properties, it'll tell you the dollars per square foot. And it also could be the dollars per square foot for property that was recorded but did not go through the MLS necessarily. How would you find the dollars per square foot for properties that did not go through the MLS? That's the tax Realist, the program I referred to that accesses tax records would do that. Then we also ought to have a CMA. And we might be using the MLS, we might be using RPR. Most of you are going to use RPR, right? It's actually easier than the MLS. CorpResent is super cool, but requires, that you spend some time on it to learn how to use it. And then the 5th way that we're going to value the property is from the point of view of an investor who's buying the property as a rental or as an investment. And based upon how investors, evaluate investment properties, we're going to estimate what your property is going to be worth. Right? 5 different ways. And when you're talking about how they price it, the 3 ways of pricing it are pricing it low so that we create interest, so that we get offers sooner than later. Pricing it right is when we stick to a number that we predetermined because we think it's true. That might work, but it might not work. And the needle in the haystack is when we're going to price it high because you never know, some crazy person might wander in and buy it, and we can always come down later, right? Couldn't we? Right? Those are non-sales and are what we call expired listings. The seller has to also realize that the interaction with competition is like having a price war and a beauty contest at the same time. And that we have to look at the competition. Who else is in the pageant with us? So if you were in the area and you had some money, this is mostly from presenting it to the seller. If you were a buyer in the area and you had that much money, what could you buy instead of this property? And we have to look good compared to them. Because if we don't, there's 2 kinds of properties that are on the market. There are the properties that sell, and then there are the properties that others use to sell. You understand? So there's some properties that are on the market that buyers agents and listing agents are pointing at. And they're saying, look how much nicer we are compared to that one for the price. See what our price is? Did you see that one? Right? This is a nicer house and the price is lower. So the other property comes up in conversation, but it's used as an incentive to sell somebody else's property. We want to be in the group that sells, not in the group that is used to sell. Right? Which kind of home do you want to be? Now, RPR, and here are some links to how to do it. Let me see, do we have, Galilee likes the 5 ways. You've heard of that, haven't you, before? All 5 ways. Is it legal to represent sellers of properties with unpermitted new development? Yes, we do it all the time. What you have to do is tell people it lacks permits. But you can sell unpermitted property. We do it often. And by the way, I don't know, I'm going to say it. Agents will call me up, listing appointment, they didn't ask, can you describe the property, right? They just showed up, right, with what it says in the tax records, and they call me up on the phone and they say, I don't know what to do, right? I'm listing this property and the tax records say it's a 3-1, but I'm here and it's a 5-3. What should I put it in the MLS for, and how many bedrooms, right? And my answer is, when you walk through the property, how many bedrooms do you count? And there was, well, 5. Well, then put down 5. Well, what about the bathrooms? There's only 1 in the county. So when you walk through the house, how many bathrooms do you count? Well, 3. Put down 3. The next question is, well, what will an appraiser do? Right? Is the appraiser going to appraise it as a 5-3 or a 3-1? And my answer is, when the appraiser walks through the house, how many bedrooms are they going to see? 5. How many bathrooms? 3. Now, is it likely the appraiser is going to note that these might have been done without the benefit of permits? Sure, happens all the time. Right? It doesn't mean the additions have no value. Right? It simply means that they didn't bother to get the permits. What's the worst that could happen is they might have to remove the unpermitted part. That almost never happens. What usually happens is, if it's not up to code, they make you bring it up to code and then pay them for the permits and a fine. If it's up to code already, but you just didn't bother to do it, they make you pay a fee and then they permit it and everything's cool. Right. So yeah, but you have to tell people it's done without permits. All right, so Realtor's Property Resource. This is always a good place to start. You take, and by the way, before I would go to the house, right? If I were going to a house to this listing appointment, I would have in advance logged into RPR, found the listing, and I would have clicked on the save button, right? I'd want to save it. I also want to go through all, I want to run a CM, I want to do everything, right, in advance. I can pull it up on my phone because RPR has a mobile version. Right, so hopefully this is what, this is what it looks like. The RVM, I always start here. The RVM is the Realtor's Valuation Model. It's an automated valuation model. And if you click on the number or click on the View Details, it's going to tell you how it came up with that number. Both, if we clicked on the number, we'd be looking at the same page. All right, do I need to answer anything? How do we get the art of CMA? Is somebody there? Ra, can you paste it in? Please, if you're still there. Anybody? I will do it again. So there. All right. All right. I'm deputizing somebody to paste it in if I get more questions. All right. There you go. So what was I doing? So we're looking at what RPR thinks. RPR, first of all, gives us a star rating. And in this case, they have 5 stars, which means they feel pretty confident. What do they base the rating on? The answer is how consistent their automated valuation model is with the other automated valuation model. Does your artificial intelligence agree with the other artificial intelligence? That sort of it. I scroll down, peek at this. It's a 3.3, 1818, built in 1983. It's an active listing at $305 a square foot. All right. So the first thing I want to do is look and see, are there any with the same square footage that appear on this? The answer is no, right? That makes me sad, because that means this is not a standard model. or one that has not sold in a long time. Right? That's what it says to me. But if we're looking at 1983, here's a 1983 property, and so here we have properties that were maybe part of the same subdivision, different square footage, not an exact match. We're wanting to look, when we get into numbers, for things that are geographically close and for things that are close in terms of the square footage. The square footage in dollars per square foot does not scale. So smaller properties, smaller square feet have more dollars per square foot than properties with larger square footage. All right, so we need to stay within it, but I'm doing this first of all because I want to see what RPR thinks, and the part that may become important is this part here. See all these? Because what this is saying is that these were all off-market properties. Off-market is a euphemism for not in the MLS, which means that, by the way, if you were, this is another disadvantage to using the MLS as your way of doing a market analysis, in that the MLS only includes properties that, you know, were in the MLS, right? And RPR looks at recorded title transfers as well as what happened in the MLS. Now, so there's only one that went through the MLS. It's a 3-2 built in 19, and it got $351 a square foot. It's not very far away. The reason why this one is probably going to be more important is because if it went through the MLS, we know what it looked like and we get to read a description. These, we don't know what they look like and we don't get to read a description. But what I would be looking for are some really close matches, right? Like if I saw another 1818, I would be copying that address, because I want to make sure that it's picked up in RPR, right? If I see something that just jumps out at me, this is a killer comp, right? This one here, this is the one, then I might copy that address to use it later. All right, so what do you mean you're going to use it later? So we're looking at it. We're going to go down to where it says CMA value. I think I've done one of these before. So this is what you get. There are two choices. Don't pick the sales comparison analysis. All right, just don't. It's designed kind of sort of for what an appraiser would do. They want you to sit through a class. We don't really have good enough data to do it anyhow. Most people don't want to see the difference. Leave it at comparative analysis, right? If you want to research it, go ahead, but don't expect me to walk through that one. We just don't normally use it. So the steps that you would be going through is, first they want you to confirm the facts. So this is what we would do if we knew it was a 5-3, for example. Over where it says your changes, you would put in what the bedrooms and bathrooms, the square footage is supposed to be as the seller told you. Now, we're not warranting that that's true. Several different places in the documentation that the buyer is going to sign is going to say, we don't know what the square foot, we're just telling you what the seller told us. You know, you should go have it measured. But this is where we would make changes if there were things that needed to be changed. And by the way, don't be embarrassed if you were thinking, because people ask me, if I make changes here, does that like changed in the county records? No. I mean, just think of the chaos that real estate agents could change the county records. So we want to confirm the facts, and then we look at comps. And what I always do is I start with draw radius, right? It depends upon the level at which I'm doing this. And I generally just start, and the most I would go out at the beginning of this would be 1/2 mile. It's location, location, and location. An appraiser, an investor that was looking to do a fix and flip would want to see comps that are within a quarter of a mile. And sometimes we need to zoom in because we know what the neighborhood is. And we need to just look on the outskirts. I'm too lazy to do that. I just look to see where it appears on the map. So notice under property status, it also, I don't do expired, withdrawn, and canceled, not here. And it's going to, if I do show, I don't want to do that. Active for sale, pending, active, closed. And it's going to also look through county records if there are some, but I also looked at them earlier. But we're going to go back for 3 months. That's always a good starting point. I want that. And we're going to do a search. And so now it's popping up properties, some of which are very close, some not so much. So what I'm doing is the ones at the top are generally closer, right, to the subject property. Notice it's pulling in public record information. So it's not just looking at what went through the MLS, it's looking at what was recorded. Now notice we only have 2 sales, and we really want more than 2. It's also, there's a bunch of pendings, that's interesting. It's the stars means that it was used in their automated valuation model. It's a 3-3, 1818, 1983. One thing we want to do is make sure we see 1983. Not quite, but boy, the square footage is kind of close. Notice that 3-3 doesn't appear as a very common choice. You know, now we could just say, well, what about that one? I don't know. And I'm usually looking up here to see if this moves the number very much. But we don't really have a lot. So I might go back and say, well, give me 6 months. And what I want to see, this is a 3-2, still not, you know, not a 3-3. And it doesn't really change our range. You know, this one's too new. I wouldn't use it because it's built in 2010. That one is a pending. We don't know what the pendings are pending for. We only know how much the list price was when somebody bought it, right? We don't know if that's what's closing. So we don't always include those in a market analysis because we don't know. You might want to know. But, you know, and if you really want to know, let's say there was a 1818, 3-3, 1983 pending, I would call that agent up and say, hey, I'm listening to the same property, and we, you know, you're going to be closing in a couple of weeks anyhow. Can you give me an idea what it sold for? And a lot of times they'll just tell you. So what we have is a range between 544 and 638. So we click on that. Now, what we really should be doing, let me go back, is notice the spread here in the dollars per square foot. What we're really asking, using a low, medium, and high, so what we're really asking is the subject properties, condition, location, all of that. Is it closer to the one that's $299 a square foot? Or is it closer to the one that's $351 a square foot? Or is it like, you know, in the middle? So that's something. How would we know that? Well, we would be clicking on these links and looking at the other properties. The challenge, of course, with the ones that went through the public records is we don't have pictures of them or get to read an agent's description, but we've got a bunch. Now, if we are a neighborhood expert, right? And we've actually, this is one of the value of farming a geographic area, because if you're farming the area, you got to go look at all the properties that come on the market, which hopefully would mean you've actually seen some of these comps from the inside. But what we're able to do in the automated calculations based upon our comp is we have sliders to play with. How does this property compare to the subject property? Well, let's say that this is not as nice as ours. So we slide it over a tick or two. Or ours isn't as nice as this. You get the idea. So we can move those little sliders around. It's even possible, I'm not going to do the sliders today. It's even possible to, in the property, put in information about repairs and remodels and things like that. And it uses a calculator that's done by a remodeling company that gives you an idea. I'll give you an idea of how that works, right? So if we hit adjust the comps, this is the active one. How do we do this? The subject property, I don't know. I have to think about that. I think I'm going to move on to the next one. We go to the results. You could write in a value. This is dangerous. This is dangerous, right? For you to think of a number and stick to it before you go meet with them. I don't generally do that because I like to get listings. And then you can create a report. The adjusting comps is a very wonky thing, right? Like what does it, how do you know what a pool is worth or whatever? So we're not usually, if we use the pricing strategy of starting low so that we can bid it up, we don't have to hit it right on the number. You understand? You don't have to have the number because we're deliberately pricing it low to get, people crazy about it. Now, these are the different reports that you get. We usually run a version of the seller's report. And what I mean by a version is if you click where it says seller's report, there's a whole bunch of boxes. Notice a bunch of them I didn't check. I didn't check them all. And you can see what a sample looks like, and it wouldn't hurt you to practice. Now, some of the reasons that I didn't check it is, let's say, I don't think that the client is really into lots of data and too much stuff. So I might not have all of the old photos of the property, historical photos, sometimes I don't even worry about assessed value or mortgage records. It all depends if that's an issue. I don't do these other things. Market activity and market activity in the area are like heat maps, and market activity in the area is basically everything that happened in the zip code, right? Which I don't give to people. And the reason I don't give it to them is because why? Right? What if they look at something and they say, hey, look at this one, it looks just like ours and it sold for $875,000. Look at this. And I look at it and it's one of the ones from what happened in the zip code. And I said, oh yeah, well, but that's not really a comp for you because that's not really in your area. Right? And they say, well, what do you mean it's not a comp for us? You just gave it to us, didn't you? Why did you give us this? If this wasn't anything we were supposed to look at and take into consideration, I don't understand. Why did you do it then? Right. So it doesn't hurt that you as an agent have seen it, because sometimes they say, well, I heard that one over there got so much. Right. And it's better if you could say, no, actually they didn't. Right. But I don't check all those boxes and give them all that stuff. I don't do pricing strategies. I want them to tell me. The net sheet I don't do here, but I do it using Chicago Title's software. And Rochelle says there's an assumable loan. And so Mohsen, I don't know why you pasted in that long. I don't know. I'm not gonna click on. The other thing that you can do is notice over here, there's cover page elements. Now, you have to have your name because the Department of Real Estate insists. You have to have your license number, the Department of Real Estate insists. And you have to have the name of your broker, the Department of Real Estate insists. None of this other information is actually required by law. But it would be good if you have a title, right? You know, sales consultant, whatever. If you you put your work, whatever phone number you put in as your work phone is what will show up. Your email. That's all that I check. Right, when I do it. I also have custom pages, and custom pages are pages. I have a marketing plan that says what I'm going to do to sell the property. For those of you that are in my group, there's a copy that's editable in the document library, and it automatically puts it at the end. I could add, I think, up to 5 and so many megabytes. So you could add stuff to this, which you could either toggle on or off. Right. For example, I don't want it to have my marketing plan. I do want it to have my marketing plan. If I were doing this to help a buyer make an offer, I would be doing a property report, right, which again is going to have similar information, but it's going to show comps. By the way, I do this before I show property. If I'm going to show 3 houses, I will have run the CMA prior to showing the property, so that when they say, well, what do you think this is going to sell for? What do you think about the price of this one? What are the comps like on this one? And if you say as the agent, I got no idea. I don't know anything about that. All I did is I barely was able to find the place. You know, I can do research though. I can. It would be better that you've done the research before you show the house. And that you run, you know, a market analysis. Okay. And if you want to, just going ahead. So what we can do is we can either just run the report, which is going to display, it actually gives you a URL that you can share with other people. Right. So when I'm showing property, which is a session that's going to be coming up, I give the buyers a spreadsheet, and one of the parts of the spreadsheet is a link to the RPR report for that particular property. I also can email it directly to somebody, and it sends me a copy. So if it's only one, like if I'm doing 3 because the buyer's going to be looking at 3, then I'll do it in the spreadsheet next to each one of the addresses. If it's to a potential seller, I would just, you know, put it in. Yeah. All right. So that's how you get from the beginning to producing what looks like a nice, here, I'll run one, nice looking report. What else? This works really well. Has graphs and charts, tells you what's going on in the market, gives you, here I'll show you, because all of this, here we go, here's the report. I was anxious. So this is what it looks like. Scroll through my comp analysis, that just took the average. I'm not saying, Rochelle, that that's it. But I'm just saying that given the it was the one at the top that threw the average off. But that's what, using the comps, we came up with. There's home facts, which may or may not be a necessary thing, but this is an explanation of the property. There's the livability score. I don't generally talk about this stuff. I oftentimes may talk about this chart here, because it shows the history of the property, and I don't know about that, looked pretty bad, but it shows how the property is doing, the gold being this property compared to the city, the county, the, you know, the state. There's more information about who owns it. See, a lot of this I don't talk about. This shows the locations of the comparables. The fact that you have such a wide range, what we're really doing is identifying 1 or 2 that we think are the closest comps that have sold recently, that are in a similar location. We don't need a whole bunch of them, but to base it on. And this is a summary of the different comparables, and then this is more information about each of the comparables. Right, and then this is something we can't get rid of because I would have, and then my marketing plan pops up. My approach, how do I handle a for sale by owner who is overpriced? How do you email the RPR to a seller ahead of time? Do I? All right, Nancy, first of all, I don't. I send in advance information about what's going on in the market, the city, that sort of thing, but not a CMA. It has been my experience that it is better not to be the one who says the number, but to get the seller to say the number first. So on the phone, I ask them, do you have an idea what your property is likely to sell for? Sometimes they say, no, I'm not going to tell you. That's the whole thing. You have to come and tell me. So, all right, great. I also, by the way, ask them, are they looking to net a certain amount and or how much their loans are? And if they sometimes will tell me, I want to net a certain amount, and they'll tell me their loan amount, which means I can figure out what they need to sell it for. But let's say I still can't figure it out. The first thing I do when I'm at the listing appointment, and after I've looked at the property, we're going to go through the process in a different session. I'll say, have you been paying attention to what's going on in the market in your area? And right, do you have an idea what your property is like to sell for? And again, sometimes you say, I'm not going to tell you, you have to tell me. And so then what I do is, like, there's a range that we saw in those comps. So I usually have this sort of split open, and I would pick out 3 comps: a high, a middle, and a low, in terms of dollars per square foot. And I would show them, and I would ask them which of those 3 they think is most similar to their property. And the one they pick is usually the price they're looking for. But then you're going to have to, in your mind, know what number you're going to suggest when they say, what should I list it for? But that's sometimes hard to do if you haven't even seen the house yet. Right? I mean, it's, you don't necessarily know. And so now you're deciding on the spot. It doesn't hurt to say, let me go and do research. A professional, an appraiser wouldn't just show up and give you a number. Now that I've seen your property, let me do a little more research. The range is like this, but let me put together a proposal for you. Again, you look like you're different. How do you walk away if the seller is unrealistic? And what do you do with the for sale by owner, or most for sale by owners are overpriced? And they, sometimes you have to let reality work on them, because if they won't change their mind, and would you have I walked away from a seller that is unrealistic in pricing? Not very often. But I'm in Silicon Valley, and even properties that are overpriced oftentimes sell because prices were rising. But yes, I would walk away. It doesn't do you any good to have a listing that doesn't sell. All right. Now, it's possible that if you have a listing that doesn't sell, that you get to do open houses, right? And you get to do a just listed. I had a listing in Sunnyvale that was on the market for almost 1 year. Right? I knew the owners, they weren't going to cancel, they weren't going to lower their price. 1 year. And every new agent on my team got to do open houses every weekend. Right? We did open houses, and the market got better. Right? Isn't that amazing? The market picked up, and eventually the market rose to where they were, and somebody bought it. And if I had told them I am not going to touch it because it's not priced the way I want to, I might have, I wouldn't have gotten paid a commission. And I've also gone on appointments where it was a tract home in an area I was paying attention to, and I told them, I don't think your property is worth any more than this. And they said, oh, well, so-and-so said it's worth, a lot more. And I'm like, yeah, they're just lying to you. And they listed with the other agent at the higher price, and it sold in 10 days. I was wrong. It was worth more. But after a while, the market is going to let us know as the days on market, and if it's being shown, one of the things you have to look at is how often is it being shown? And if it's still being shown a lot, then the pricing is still, debatable. If showing starts to drop off to where people aren't showing it, you need to do something. And I also go to Zillow and Redfin and look for property. If you were a buyer, what would you see? What are the choices? And sometimes that answers the question why it hasn't sold. Does that answer your questions? I presume it would for a longer listing. Yeah, I told those guys that, let's do it for a year or something like that. They were going to extend it. I knew the family. I told them that, I would leave it in the commission in my will to my, grandchildren, eventually. But it was a Sunnyvale house and it did sell and I did get paid. There are potential advantages of having a listing. Number one, it might sell. They might lower their price. Somebody might offer more. It might sell. Number two, because it's your listing and you're marketing it and you've done it just listed and you're doing open houses. And if you start working around that neighborhood, you might end up with another listing. And number three, somebody that's interested in the property might reach out to you at the open house because they're interested in buying the property, whether they buy that one or not, you might end up with a buyer. Those are three things that could happen if you have a listing. I don't have a very good list of good things that happen when you don't have a listing. I mean, you have more time on the weekend. Right, you can, watch sports, go to barbecues, your weekends are open, right? Your people aren't calling you and emailing you and asking, annoying questions about a property, right? There's, I guess, some advantages. But there's a theory that it's better to have a listing than not have a listing. Navi, did you have a question?
I do. So I'll not take long, but so, when you said about the CMA part and so we do our comparative analysis, numbers come up. Now, in a market like this, and it also in Bay Area, it also depends on the area you are doing your listing. Not all areas are same. So say I have a property that I'm listing for maybe the market analysis price, and I do not get and the seller is not agreeing to that, wants to list the property for a little higher, but because of all that negotiations, we finally come up to a price, we list it. However, what if there are not multiple offers and it sells just at that, but just, it's like after a few days, there are other properties, market improves there, and it could be like within few, weeks span, something similar sells for more price. Sellers can always come back and, they lost money, right? Because they could have made more selling the property, and the real estate, the entire business is kind of referrals. I do good job now, I get a repeat customer. So isn't there something, if the party is not agreeing on the sale price or the listing price, is there something to do about it? Or I know this is a little off track topic, but
So, first of all, I would give them a pricing strategy. So this is what I say, right? There are three ways of pricing your property, three strategies. Number one is we're having a sale. We're going to price the property lower than the market so that it'll create a frenzy. The open houses will look like anthills. We're going to get multiple offers. If we get multiple offers, you're more likely to get a higher offer. The more people want something, the more people want it. And more likely to get a non-contingent offers if we have a multiple offer situation. That's strategy number one. Strategy number two is the price is right, and that's where you look at the numbers and take out your calculator and you make a spreadsheet and you come up with a number, and we list it for that and we stick to it because that's the number, don't you know? And sometimes that doesn't work at all and you get no offers, and sometimes you get one. Then there's the price, the needle in the haystack strategy, which is where we deliberately price it high because, you know, we can always come down later and you never know. Somebody might want to buy it. We might as well try it. And those are what we usually refer to as expired listings. So which of those three strategies do you think would be best for pricing your home? They almost always say number two. Almost always. They say,
I would
"Oh, the
also
price
think
is
the
wrong."
same. Yeah, I would also
Right.
think the same because, you know, if you're listing it at a lower price, thinking that more people come for the open house, but what if it doesn't? Then the property sells at a lesser price.
Well, no, you're not under no obligation to sell it at a lesser price. So one of the things that I also would do is show them, I mean, I can't do this. How much time do I have? Not too bad. All right, so let's do this quickly. So let's say there's a video of me doing this on my YouTube channel, but there's a video of me doing everything on the YouTube channel. So what I would have done before I went there, because I've had people want to argue about this. I would say, okay, sold the single family homes, and let's say we're in 95123 in the zip code, and we're looking for something that happened in the last 30 days. So how many do we have in that zip code? Single family sold, single family. 0 minus 30, really? 95123, I don't believe it. So let's hit it. I must have done something with the criteria that I didn't. I want sold. Close of escrow, 0 minus 30. All right, how about that? Now tell me, that doesn't make any sense. So maybe I was putting in the wrong spot. How about that? That looks better, right? So I would select all of the records, and what I'm going to do is I've created an export. And the export I called how much over, and what the export looks like. And if you're in Paragon or Rapatoni, what you would do is create a custom display. In fact, you do this in Matrix now. And these are the categories that I put in the export. So I'm not going to change it, but I'm going to get that how much over, and I'm going to export it, and it comes out as a spreadsheet. And you could do this, by the way, just by looking at the results in the MLS. But what I'm doing is I'm looking at how much are people getting over what they listed it for. And so if you're not good at Excel, you don't have to be very good at Excel to do this, but what I want to know is the difference, and I want to know the percent. And so the difference would be the list price minus the sale price, and the percent would be the difference divided by the list price, and that would be a percent. There we go. All right. And then I copy these and I drag them down. And I let it run. And so my strategy, by the way, would vary depending upon the area. So for example, I think I did this wrong. Let me do this. I did it wrong. This equals that minus that. How about that? How about that? That seems, it's still 0 for that guy, but anyhow. So what you'll see is that if the average, which is something you'd want to know, what is the average that people are getting over list price in that area? Because if the average is 4 or 5%, which sometimes it is, then if we list it for where we want to be, buyers are going to wonder, what do we really want? Right? What do we really want? That doesn't look right. So what we want to do, I didn't want to sum it. I wanted to average it. How about that? So the average might be 4%, but I am really not doing well today. So how about this? This is sum, we don't sum, we want average. There we go. And it summed it again. The RPR would have done this already. It's not going to here. And it's just not helping me. So what I would do when I'm, better at Excel is I would notice, look at some of these percentages. This guy got 8% over list price. They got 20%, 5%, 11%, 10, 12, right? If we, this I know I can do correctly. If I sort it and if I sort it, notice that some people got 10% less, but look at this group here, right? Look at that. So if that's what's happening in the market, and we don't play that game, and see how few of them got exactly what they were looking for, right? So, and then here are some people that didn't get as much. But if we're pricing it without taking into consideration that people may be bidding it up, what they'll do is they'll say, well, wow, how much do they really want? Right, because they're thinking that you're going to want more than what you've listed it for, because that's what everybody seems to be getting. So when I've showed people this report, people that were saying, no, we don't want to start low, that's all we want to do, it's not going to work, right? Son told me I was crazy, your idea is nuts. And when I showed them this, they're like, oh, I see what you mean. I mean, look at over $100,000 over list price. Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Right, look at that. So now in some areas when I run this, I don't see hardly anything over list price. It's a little, the average is even a little under. So then we wouldn't do that, right? Because you need to know the dollars over the percent over list and dollars per square foot given the area. RPR calculates that, the MLS calculates that, so that when you're having a conversation with the seller, you can add it into the banter. People on average get 3% over what they listed for, but they often reduce the price a couple of times. And then they get better. Sellers think most of the time when they price labor, they never get more than that. Well, so Nancy, I wouldn't limit the number of open houses. I'd get new agents to do them. And the traditional listing presentation, which I'm going to sort of go through, if you track, so I would be asking somebody, there are three goals, right? One goal is to get the most money possible when you sell your home. Would you say that's a goal that you have? You want to net the most money possible when you sell the home? They say, yes, of course I do. I want to net the most money possible. Great. Now, what you're going to see is that houses that sell quickly generally net more money than houses that don't sell quickly, for a couple of reasons. Number one, statistics show, right? Because we track how real estate is shown. Everybody that uses the lockbox, people that go to open houses, that in the first 2.5 weeks or so, most of the people that are going to look at a house have looked at it. So if we were graphing it, it would be really high for 2.5 weeks, and then it would start to go down. And by the time we get to week 3 and 4, the number of people that are looking at it has just plummeted. So if we're overpriced during the time that most of the people are looking at it, so they don't consider it when we're thinking of modifying the price, we're doing it at a time when no one's looking at it anymore. Right, the herd has already passed. It's too late to dig pits and make traps. They're gone. They left. And the longer we are on the market, the less you're going to get. And the reason is that first of all, it's like the vultures start the circle. Right, I know investors that only want to see homes that have been on the market 90 days or more. Why? Because they think the seller is going to be weak. If you were a buyer and properties were selling on average, this is a number you need to know, on average in the zip code in 15 days, that's average. can you understand when we hit 45, if you were a buyer, what would you be wondering? What's wrong with this property? Right? Why didn't it sell? So, and then you start lowering your price, but then nobody's looking at it because only the investors are out, and you end up getting less money than you would have gotten if we'd sold it in the first week because we'd priced it right and got multiple offers. You're going to get less money. That's and when they, who told you this? A cousin, an uncle, right? You can see in the MLS, by the way, that report. I'll do a class, by the way, on how to do the export, the one that I did, including, because I have a template that averages everything. One of the things that report shows is days on market. That's one of the export fields, and percent they got over list price. Now, what you'll see is that the shorter days on market got a higher percent over list price, and they oftentimes got a higher dollars per square foot, the ones that sold quickly. This is a conversation. I have a script, by the way. This is being not only recorded, but using the Otter program, it transcribes what I said. You need to be prepared as to what you're going to say when people ask you about this, because if they price it over the market during the time period where it's critical to sell it, so everybody's going to be unhappy. Right. All right, was that good enough? Next week, I'm going to be, and some of you should be with me, at a EXP rally in Sacramento, right, next Thursday. It's a regional rally. I'm assuming not everyone's going to be there, though. And part of this process is being able to do an accurate net sheet with different scenarios without you having to learn a lot, that you could show to a seller. You can attach it, you could attach it to the RPR report, you'd make it as a separate one. And the next week, Chicago Title is going to talk about what do you need to know about escrow and title if you're listing a house, and how net sheets work, and how to do one on yourself, on your own, all of that stuff. All right. Are we cool for today, guys?
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
All
Thank you
right.
so much.
I call it a listing discussion. Yes, most of the time we're not making a presentation. Melissa, Brandon already said you could do it. If you're wondering,
Thanks.
tell me that. I told Brandon this morning, he said yes. And yes, and we're going to do, after that, we're going to do what you do on the appointment, which is more of a conversation than it is a presentation. All right, everybody. Coolio.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Mike.